Hello, welcome to this episode of Forgotten Conspiracies. Well, this episode isn't really forgotten because this is a very, very popular conspiracy theory. We'll be discussing the JFK and Abraham Lincoln assassination. First, let's give a brief history of JFK, starting with his assassination. Assassination of a president. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was riding in his motor car in November of 1963 when a gunman, there's a separate theory on the gunman, who supposedly is Lee Harvey Oswald, but there's theories that there were more people on it. Spooky stuff, am I right? He bought a firearm, a 6.5 millimeter Carcano Model 38. He had used this weapon to attempt a prior assassination on General Edwin Walker, who was the leader of the 24th Infantry. Now, keep in mind, Oswald was a Marine vet. I don't know how you feel about the military, but that's a little unsettling because he knows ways to kill people, and because that's what you do in the military, pretty much. After he murdered JFK, he murdered a police officer named J.D. Tippit. He used a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson Victory model revolver. Around 70 minutes later, Oswald would be apprehended, and when he was going to face trial, they kept him in the basement of the FBI headquarters or whatever. A nightclub owner, Jack Ruby, murdered him. I'll get more onto that later, but here's where the conspiracies come. In 1967, Jim Garrison, a district attorney, brought an investigation to find out if Oswald was truly the lone gunman. Which brings us to Mr. Clayshaw, who was thought to have conspired to murder against JFK. By the way, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Kennedy's vice, was inaugurated 30 minutes later on Air Force One on Love Field in Dallas. So they wasted no time. They did not waste any time with that. They were like, oh, we need a president. And they're like, yeah, that might be a good idea to have one. 30 minutes later is kind of crazy, though, because they'd have... So did they just have, like, Bibles and stuff along with them or something like that? I don't remember. I'll have to do some further look into it. Here are some other notable assassinations during the 60s with how and who did it. Malcolm X was done by Thomas Hagen, Muhammad Aziz, Khalil Islam. They used a combination of 45 ACP and sawed-off shotguns in 1965. Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered by James Earl Ray, which is still disputed because they believe the CIA or FBI was behind it, so believe what you want with that. Actually, the King family sued the CIA and FBI, and they won. It was after his death. James Earl Ray was given 99 years, meaning he would have been released in 2067. I'm not saying he would have lasted that long, assuming they find out what he did in prison. I mean, murdering a civil rights activist might not get you too well imprisoned. He died in 1998 due to liver and kidney failure. He used a Remington 760 Game Master. Robert F. Kennedy was murdered by Sirhan Sirhan. Now, I would be mad, too, if my parents gave me the same first name as my last name. Honestly, I would crash. He was a pro-Palestinian who was angered at Kennedy's Israeli support during the 6 Days War. Sirhan used an Ivor Johnson .22 long revolver. What does this have to do with Abe? Yeah, honestly, yeah, that's what I'm asking. Now, on the day of his assassination, he was murdered in a 1961 Lincoln convertible limo. Here, yeah, you heard me right. 1961 Lincoln convertible. Now, we'll get more into conspiracies with that later, but at 12:30 p.m., Kennedy would unwittingly meet his end. His final words were a response to a prior question. Mr. President, they can't make you believe now that there are not some in Dallas who love and appreciate you, can't they? To which JFK responded, no, they sure can't. Oswald perched his Carcano Model 38 and shot thrice. One shot hit his larynx, which is your voice box. I believe the second bullet ricocheted off a building, and then he was shot through the back of the head. Afterwards, it was reported Miss Kennedy said, "They have killed my husband. I have his brains in my hand," which is nasty, considering brains and guts and all that stuff. It's pretty nasty, and I'm sure it was very disturbing and just nasty, and it was just disgusting what you could do. Now let's talk about Mr. John Wilkes Booth, the killer of Abraham Lincoln. Let's set the stage real fast. Booth, our assassin, came from a long line of actors. He was known for his energy and good looks. I mean, objectively, back in the 1860s. Now, I don't believe in ugly or anything, but, anyways. He initially planned to kidnap Lincoln. He used a Philadelphia .44 Derringer pistol. But why? John Wilkes Booth assassinated Abraham Lincoln because he believed Lincoln was a tyrant who was taking away white Southern rights. Booth was a Confederate sympathizer who wanted to restore the Confederacy. This is true. He wanted Lincoln, and I guess assuming the Union, to pay for ending the Civil War. He wanted to cause so much chaos the Confederacy could kickstart the Civil War back up. And I don't know why, because, we have, 23 states in the Union, and, I think 10 for the South during the Civil War, so they just wanted to keep getting beat, I guess, or something. Let me explain. Booth was enraged when Lincoln supported black citizenship and endorsed limited African American voting rights. He also believed that Lincoln was responsible for the nation's ills. I guess he bore hatred towards Mr. Lincoln because of his reform, passing the 13th through 15th Amendments. The 13th ended slavery, 14th allowed all U.S. citizens the right to vote, not women. They would get that 53 years later in 1921. But black men could vote, and I guess foreigners too, that were legal. Obviously, legal citizens could vote, not illegals, which is a very controversial topic nowadays because of Biden's policies, but we're not talking about him. We're talking about John Wilkes Booth. So what happened to Mr. John Wilkes Booth? He met his end in a Virginia barn. So he was shot by a federal agent in the neck, and I suppose he died. So, where is? Sorry. He met his end in a Virginia barn, like I said. My script was getting messed up, so sorry about that. So, like I said, we can finally discuss some odd similarities. Now, I want you to pick out which conspiracy, or I guess part of the conspiracy, you think is true and which aren't, but at the end I'll tell you which ones are and aren't at the end of this part. Lincoln and Kennedy were both 7 letters, which is true if you count it out. Both presidents were elected into Congress in in a year ending in 46, and later a presidency in the 60s. True, according to the National Archives. Both assassins, John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, were born in the year ending in 39 and were known by 3 names, composed of 15 letters. False. Only Oswald was born in 1939. Now, I know that wouldn't have mattered for John Wilkes Booth, but he was born in 1838, making him 26 or 27 when he was murdered. Booth ran from a theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theater. Nope, that's not true. Both assassins were Southerners. This is true. Booth was from Maryland and Oswald was from Louisiana. Both of the president's successors were Democrats named Johnson, with the last name Johnson. This is true. Andrew Johnson and Lyndon Baines Johnson. Both Lincoln and Kennedy were particularly concerned with civil rights and made their views strongly known. This is true. Both were concerned for African American right to vote for Lincoln and their rights to do stuff and be treated equally under JFK. Both presidents were shot in the head on a Friday in the presence of their wives, as I quoted earlier with Miss Kennedy saying, "I have his brains in my hands." That is true. November 22nd was a Friday, and April 15th was also a Friday. Both Oswald and Booth were killed before they could be put on trial. It's true. It is believed that Jack killed him because Lee might have revealed a bigger plot. Now, that's a belief. Now, if I go missing, you guys know where I went. So, it was believed that Jack killed him because I'd like to believe that he was mad because Oswald killed the stinking president. But no, it was believed there was a bigger plot to kill him, and Oswald was just another pawn in the game. Both were married in their 30s to women who were in their 20s. This is true. Jacqueline Kennedy, or Jackie, as it's easier to pronounce, Jackie Kennedy was 24 and Mary was 23. Here's some truth to it. Both were succeeded by Southerners. As I said earlier, Andrew Johnson was from Tennessee and Lyndon Baines Johnson was from Texas. Lincoln, though attacked on a Friday, died on a Saturday. So that makes technically that murder that they were both killed on a Friday not true, but true on a technicality. So we'll keep it as true. Now, here's another interesting thing I want to discuss. The Kennedy curse. The curse of the Kennedys. I put a lot on here, so I'm going to read it. The Kennedy curse is a series of accidents, deaths, assassinations, and other calamities involving members of the American Kennedy family. This is the list. There's a lot to read off, so I'll explain it further on. August 12th, 1944, Joseph P. Kennedy died when the military aircraft he was piloting exploded over East Suffolk, England. So I guess he was just flying around and stuff, and his plane exploded. September 9th, 1944, William Cavendish, Marquis of Hartington, newlywed husband of Kathleen Kennedy, was fatally shot by a German sniper while leading his company near Heppen, Belgium. So this was happening during World War II. So I guess maybe a German sniper was like, "Oh, there's a target," and shot the husband of a Kennedy, I guess, or something like that. I don't know. May 13th, 1948. Kathleen Kennedy, formerly known as Kathleen Cavendish, Marchioness of Hartington, died in a plane crash in France. Oh, okay. So basically, plane crashed, killing her. August 23rd, 1956. Arabella Kennedy, daughter of JFK, died at birth. So she was stillborn, I assume, by what it means by that. August 9th, 1963. Patrick Bouvier Kennedy, son of JFK, died of infant respiratory distress syndrome 2 days after his premature birth on August 7th at Otis Air Force, Massachusetts. November 22nd, 1963. I'm pretty sure we all know what happened that day, but in case you don't, U.S. President JFK was assassinated by, allegedly, Lee Harvey Oswald as he rode in a motorcade through Dealey Plaza in Texas. June 5th, 1968. U.S. Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy was shot by Saran, that guy I told you about earlier, who I guess his parents didn't think too much and said, "Oh, first name, last name, Saran." Now, obviously, Palestinians, I'm not sure how their name system works, so I can't say too much about that. In the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles on the night of his victory in the California primary, Robert died the following morning. January 23rd, 1974, Athala Ponzel Lindsley, who dated Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. up until his death, was murdered at her home. April 25th, 1984. David A. Kennedy, son of Robert F. Kennedy, died of a drug overdose in a Palm Beach, Florida hotel room. December 31st, 1997. Oh, that's on New Year's Eve. Oh, that's sad. Michael Lemoyne Kennedy, son of Robert F. Kennedy, died in a skiing accident after crashing into a tree in Aspen, Colorado. So that happened just before New Year's. That is sad. July 16th, 1999. John F. Kennedy Jr. died together with his wife Carolyn Bessette Kennedy and her sister Lauren Bessette when the plane he was piloting crashed off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. September 16th, 2011. Cara Kennedy, daughter of Ted Kennedy, died of a heart attack while exercising in a Washington, D.C. health club. Mary Richardson Kennedy, wife of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., died by suicide on the grounds of her home in Bedford, New York. Sawyer Kennedy Hill, granddaughter of Robert F. Kennedy, died of an accidental drug overdose at Kennedy Compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts. April 2nd, 2020. So we're getting into some really recent events. Maeve Kennedy McCain, granddaughter of Robert F. Kennedy, disappeared with her 8-year-old son Gideon during a short canoe trip in Chesapeake Bay. Their bodies were recovered from the bay later that week. Autopsies revealed that both had accidentally drowned in turbulent and chilly waters. That is 14 people who died. Do I believe there's a higher power that was in control of this? Let's look at it like this. 50% were reported as accidents. That doesn't just happen. Half. So 7 of the 14 deaths were accidents. Yeah, there's got to be something going on because that doesn't just happen out of the blue. Like, I don't know. It's creepy. Maybe this family is cursed with bad luck. Who knows? There's more. There are a few more instances of curses. Let's discuss them before we move on. 1941 in November, Rosemary Kennedy, age 23, struggled to read and write as she suffered with mood swings, seizures, and violent outbursts. During birth, Rosemary was deprived of oxygen, and her mother and nurse waited for the doctor to arrive. As she grew older, she became more rebellious, and her family was like, oh crap, she's going to ruin the family name. So instead of, giving her a good spanking or something, to adjust her attitude or whatever, guess what they did? Joseph Kennedy secretly arranged for her to undergo a prefrontal lobotomy, which is where they cut you open and take out a part of your brains, which was seen as a promising treatment for various mental illness. Instead of saving Rosemary, the now discredited procedure left her mentally and physically incapacitated. Rosemary remained institutionalized in seclusion in rural Wisconsin until her death in 2005. Her family remained distant for the most of Rosemary's life, but Eunice Kennedy Shriver, her sister, grew close to her later in life. Eunice went on to found the Special Olympics. Okay, so we got a Kennedy to thank for the Special Olympics. That's pretty cool. And the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation, which researches developmental and intellectual disabilities. There's still more to read, so hold on. July 8th, 1969. Ted Kennedy accidentally drove his car off a bridge in Massachusetts, resulting in the drowning death of 28-year-old passenger Mary Jo Kopchin. In his televised statement a week later, Ted said that on the night of the incident, he wondered whether some awful curse actually hung over the Kennedys. Ted did not report the accident to the police until the next morning and pled guilty to a charge of leaving the scene of an accident. Wow. How did he not get murder? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how she evaded murder. Joseph P. Kennedy II was the driver of a Jeep in Nantucket, Massachusetts that crashed and left his passenger, Pam Kelly, paralyzed. Fellow passenger and brother David A. Kennedy was injured. Edward M. Kennedy Jr., age 12, had his right leg surgically amputated as a result of bone cancer. He went on a 2-year drug treatment to cure the cancer. Patrick J. Kennedy crashed his automobile while intoxicated. He was sentenced to 1 year of probation and a fine of $350. That just about fully reaches what I wanted to discuss in this high-profile death. Our next story comes to you in a heart-shaped box. Frontman and possible murder victim Kurt Cobain. Now, Kurt here has a very interesting story. Very young, he was diagnosed with like ADD, depression. His parents divorced. So let's quickly go over the story. In 1987, Kurt Cobain formed Nirvana with Chris Novoselic and Aaron Burkhardt in 1987, as I said, and they formed grunge. Heck yeah. When Cobain was 9 years old, his parents divorced. He later said the divorce had a profound effect on his life, and his mother noted that his personality had changed dramatically. Cobain became defiant and withdrawn. In a 1993 interview, he said he felt ashamed of his parents as a child and desperately wanted to... He said he was embarrassed of his parents, which I guess if you really feel like the divorce is your fault, which most of the time it isn't, it's, Now, his mom remarried a very abusive man, so Cobain witnessed domestic violence inflicted upon her, with one incident resulting in her being hospitalized with a broken arm. Now, hold on just a second. Why would you go to somebody who's abusive to you? I don't care if they're the richest person alive. If someone is abusing you, you get the heck out of there, and you find somebody who will love you, not somebody who's going to hurt you. Cobain befriended a homosexual student at his school and was bullied because of it. Now, Kurt was not gay, which I will explain later of what happened with that. He said he liked being associated with a gay personality because it did not like people. And when they thought he was gay, they left him alone. He said, I started out being really proud that I was gay, even though I wasn't. Now, Kurt did set boundaries with his gay friend on an occasion where his friend tried to kiss him, explaining to his friend that he wasn't gay. On his 14th birthday in February of 1981, Cobain's uncle offered him either a bike or a used guitar. Kurt chose the guitar. Soon he was trying to play Led Zeppelin's song, Stairway to Heaven. He also learned how to play Louie Louie, Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. In the Cars, My Best Friend Girls, before he began working on his own songs, so he started writing songs pretty early. Cobain was left-handed, despite being forced to write with his right hand. Cobain was a vocal supporter of the pro-choice movement and involved himself and Nirvana in the L7 Rock for Choice campaign. He received death threats from a small number of bands for this stance. And obviously, you have your own opinions on it. I'm not going to go there because that's the wrong podcast. Maybe I'll have another podcast where I get into that kind of stuff and talk about it. In school, Kurt was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and was prescribed Ritalin. He had bronchitis and intense physical pain during his youthful years. In an interview in 1993, he said, every time I've had an endoscope, they find a red irritation in my stomach, but it's psychosomatic. It's all from anger and screaming. He then goes on to mention that he had minor scoliosis in junior high. He also had depression, which is, I'm sure, that fueled a lot of his songs. I do know that. Cobain was diagnosed with bronchitis and severe laryngitis. He flew to Rome the next day for medical treatment and was joined there by his wife, Courtney Love, who we will discuss in a few minutes here once I finish his story. The next morning, Love awoke to find that Cobain had overdosed on champagne and rohypnol, which I do not know. I guess I should have looked it up what it was. Cobain was rushed to the hospital and was unconscious for the rest of the day. Dave Grohl, which is another, I think the guitarist for Nirvana, now he works for Foo Fighters, I'm pretty sure, saying that Kurt had died. However, he was called again to told the singer was hospitalized but stable. So he's okay. Well, was okay then, I suppose. He was hospitalized but stable. Now I'm sure you what happened. You guys know what happened in 1994. In 1994, he killed himself with a legally purchased Remington Model 11 20 gauge shotgun. Now this is where our story begins because conspiracy theories popped up that his wife murdered him. No, Kurt was not murdered by Courtney. I used to believe this, and I wish I had a reason to say, maybe, but this is something. But I do have one thing. It's not a reliable source, but it's still worth mentioning. He had about twice the lethal dose of heroin in his system. Now, he was a heavy heroin user, so honestly, how could he have picked up the weapon if he had so much in his system? Unfortunately, I don't have anything else really to talk about, so thank you guys so much for watching, and in our next episode, we get a special guest on our podcast for a collaboration episode.